Well, Frank Carbone is the Mayor of Fairfield and he joins us now. Frank, can you take us through your concerns?
Good evening, first of all. And obviously, they're not my concerns, they're the concerns of my community. It's my role as the Mayor to express them and to make sure that we're heard loud and clear. And it's the Prime Minister's role to make sure that he listens. And unfortunately, the Prime Minister at the moment, he's expressed that there is national security issues in repatriating them, but he's done a media release, and I don't think he's taken into account the tens of thousands of refugees that fled their home, had their churches, their homes burnt back in Syria, have lost their loved ones, have watched a lot of their families be beheaded and burnt, and have come and resettled in Western Sydney, and many of them here in Fairfield. So I don't think he's actually consulted with them, and it's very easy for people to talk and to say things, and they don't have experience, but if you walk in their shoes, and you've got to understand that it can be a very traumatic experience. It can be one full of emotions and one that obviously breeds a lot of fear. So all we're asking as the mayors, myself, the Mayor of Liverpool, Nembanoon, and George Grease, the Mayor of Campbelltown, is that the Prime Minister come out and consult and talk, to have a discussion with the community, make sure the community's put at ease and make sure that he explains what's going on. But at the moment, we're not hearing anything. All we're hearing about is the debate of the Voice and the Republic. But I can tell you the most important things here in Western Sydney right now is the cost of living and the repatriation of ISIS. And we expect the Prime Minister not to use our region as a dumping ground. He should consult, respect people of Western Sydney. They're very hard-working people, and we will stand up for our community, and that's my role as the Mayor. And I'll continue to do that no matter what.
Frank, I think that's a very valid point, but these, at the end of the day, are Australian citizens and they are returning to their homes. So what is the alternative?
Well, it's not my job to decide the alternative. It's the Australian government to make sure that they keep the Australian people safe. But what I will say, as someone that's had a lot of opinion from my local community, is the facts are these people left voluntarily this country. They went through different countries and actually went to Syria, and they went there and assisted. And many of the children are actually born in the camps and they have dual citizenship as well. But what we do know is that under the Australian Citizenship Act, you pledge your allegiance to Australia and you pledge to defend this country. And unfortunately, these people decided to turn their backs on our community, turn their backs on our country, and they went there and fought against Australian soldiers. How would our air servicemen and women feel? How would their wives feel, those that unfortunately were lost? How would those refugees or those people in Syria who lost, those children that lost their fathers fighting side by side next to Australian service personnel feel when they can't come here? And I would actually argue that those people where their fathers actually fought side by side with Australian personnel are actually more of an Australian citizen than anybody else, because they fought with us, didn't fight against us.
I understand that point, Frank, but legally they're not. I mean, Australian citizens are a different category, and that legal difference really, really matters. And so we have obligations to Australian citizens that we don't have, for example, to refugees, as thoroughly deserving as those people might be. Do you at least accept that point?
Well, under the criminal code, Commonwealth Criminal Code, I think it's section 80, it actually says that you can't commit treason, and treason is when you leave your country and you aid and abet. It doesn't matter if you're baking a cake or scones and assisting ISIS, you've committed treason. And I mean, under that act, you can actually have your citizenship revoked.
Yeah, but you'd have to convict them and then do that first, though, Frank, and that hasn't happened. So that they remain. And you're talking also a lot about kids here. Well, in fact, mostly about kids. So what would you do? Would you leave kids in camps overseas when they are Australian citizens?
But just going back to that point, the Australian government has kept Julian Assange out of this country. They've done that. They had no problems about doing all that. He's an Australian citizen. I didn't see them bend over backwards to help them either.
No, sorry, Frank, I don't mean to do this. That's a very separate case, because they didn't keep him out of the country. He didn't want to leave an embassy because of extradition. So that was a totally different sort of a situation.
Well, what about the person that got arrested today for assisting the Chinese militarily? But forgetting about that, look, the kids is a tragedy. It always is. I got kids, and we love kids. Doesn't matter if they're ours or someone else's. And unfortunately, this is the tragedy of what ISIS has caused. They've made a lot of kids orphans. And you talk about the kids that are here, but there are millions of kids, of course, that are stuck overseas, that lost their in camps as well, rotting away, and their fathers died fighting side by side with our soldiers, and the question is, who do you prioritise, the victims or those that were perpetrators? But as far as the kids go, look, it's a matter for national security to determine that. But the point I want to make is, why is it Western Sydney? Why is it Western Sydney when we have tens of thousands of people that fled ISIS? Okay, that have traumatic experiences, have very bad emotions, and this is a triggering event for them. And the least the Prime Minister can do is get out of the back of a limousine and actually come to Western Sydney and consult with people. That's all we've asked to do, is have a discussion with us. We're worthy of having a discussion, the people of Western Sydney. The Prime Minister is actually coming to Fairfield in 2 weeks' time to raise money for Gough Whitlam. Well, the least he can do is actually come to Fairfield and talk to the people that elected him, because after all I'm doing is representing the views of my community, and I'm not going to be silenced by the Prime Minister. It's unfortunate that he has not been able to have a discussion on these issues. We have invited him now for the past few weeks. He's more than welcome, happy to invite him, make a cup of coffee, and for him to listen to the concerns of our community. And as far as the children and those that are repatriated, Australia, but Australia is a very big country. They don't necessarily have to be in Western Sydney, and maybe the Prime Minister should come out and understand and have a discussion with the people out here to understand those traumatic experiences, because at the moment I don't think he understands that. And he's been able to consult.
Frank, we are going to have to leave it there, because we've given you a really good go, and we are now out of time. In fact, we've gone over time.
That's fine.
You're making your point really forcefully. I appreciate you making it. And the point about consultation especially, it'll be really interesting to see what the Prime Minister has to say. But we are, I'm afraid, out of time, mate. Thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it.